Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Please forgive me. I have a plastic cap on, deconditioning, this natural hair of mine. So I wanted to come on here right quick because it's been like 3 weeks, and life has been life. Um, Friday, I was on my way to work, and there was a dump truck. I mean, he was further ahead, but as he was going up the hill, I noticed that he had a load on there, and I always thought when you have a load like pebbles on the back, you have to have it covered. So I'm like I said, I'm further enough back, and then all of a sudden I heard this thump. I'm looking around, I'm looking at the windshield. I'm like, all right, cool. So I dropped back even further. And when I was leaving work on Friday, I went to go put my pocketbook and my work bag on the passenger side, and I looked up from the top of the glass, all the windshield, from the top all the way down, and it was coming across. And I would imagine that is because the car windows was closed because it looked like it was going to rain. So I didn't want to be running outside, because brown sugar melts, y'all. But anyway, I didn't want to run outside and have to roll the windows up, so I just left them up. So I would imagine the heat made it run. The next couple of days, it was nowhere near as hot because I'm in Connecticut. I'm on the East Coast because 1 minute it's beautiful weather, next minute it's cold, and you gotta still have your heat on. The weather's bipolar. So when I got home from work Friday, I'm looking up places, because I can't roll like that. I'm sorry, I can't roll like that. So um, the company that I was able to find, well, actually, let me stop lying. It was my brother. Because he had called me while I was online searching. And he said, hey, he said, I use this company down here in Shelton. You know what I mean? Let me give him a call. And he was like, I need your VIN number, blah, 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 blah. Gave him all the information that he needed. And he said, do you have glass, on your insurance? I said, of course I do, because you never know what's going to happen. So because I did have glass insurance, to install a brand new windshield, and I had to let them know because the tent goes from the top about right here when I'm sitting in the car. You got to bring it down, dude. You got to bring it down. So he started laughing, meaning my brother. So he called the place back and he said, hey, this is what, because I took a picture. I said, this is what the windshield color looks like. I need him to come with that. I said, because I don't want to be, blinded when I'm driving. So they called him back and said, yep, we have it in stock. I said, okay, cool. I said, all right, black man, how much this going to cost me? He said, they only asking $229. I said, $229 out the door, tax, toll, everything? And he said, yeah. He said, you still got the same, banking information? Because I have his and he has mine. Herbie is my younger brother. So I said, yeah. He said, all right, let me go ahead and, because they're sending me an invoice because I don't trust giving my credit card information over the phone. So they sent him an invoice. I don't know why he didn't just put my email in there, but that's beside the point. I ain't gonna argue. So he sent me the invoice after it was paid. He said they'll be there Tuesday, and then it started raining Monday night, and they was like, they have his information. So he said, can you do Thursday? I said, can they come to my job? Because to me, because I work like 25 to 30 minutes away from home, and where they're coming from, I felt like my job was closer, you know. And he said, no. He said that they can't come here. I said, is this for insurance purposes? You know what I mean? And he said, yes. He said they don't like to come to businesses to swap out windshields. I said, I understand. Okay, cool. So I took today off, and they said they'd be here between 9 and 1. They was here at 8:55. Said, oh, it'll be about 40 minutes. I said, all right, I'm going back in. It's too hot out here. I can't take no pressure. And so the guy started laughing. And y'all, within 15 minutes, they was done. So my brother, texted me. He said, "Hey, the car's ready, going outside." I said, "All right, cool." I get outside, and he was like, "Well, these are the do's and don'ts." And I'm looking at him like this is my first time at the rodeo, but I'm gonna let him do his job, okay? And so he was like, for 24 to 48 hours, do not take your car through the car wash. He said, because that high pressure will knock that seal out, and then you'll have water on the inside of the car. And I said, I don't want that. And we giggled a little bit. I said, okay, cool. So I said to my daughter, I said, hey, let's go out and get something to eat, go visit Geraldine. That's my sister. She had surgery on both legs. She's a registered nurse. And so she had got hurt at work, and she had these white bubbles at the bottom of her around her ankle. And one day she was taking a shower and she popped them, and her leg just started hurting. And then she noticed that they was on the other leg. I said, hey, when she called me, I said, did you scratch yourself? You know, what did you do? She said, I do remember being at the desk, and I went to go sat down and I scratched myself. She said, but I didn't put too much stock into it. I said, Sherm, that's what I call her. I said, Sherm, I said, the hospital is the most germiest place in history, you know. So she over there trying to act like, she gonna self-care and self, diagnose. And then, she was saying that she can't stand up. I was at work one day. She called me. She said, T, she said, I can't stand up. I said, I'm en route. Where you at? She said, I'm at home. I said, I'm on my way. Click, hung up the phone. I looked at the people at my job. I'm out. Okay. So I get there to her place and helped her get out, and then got into the car, took her to Pequot Medical. And they said, you have a real bad infection. And had she not come that day, you guys, she would have lost both limbs. Both. And I'm looking at her because I'm bubbling on the inside, because I can't take no pressure when it comes to my family. I ain't gonna sit here and tell no lies. I can't take no pressure. But I can be strong while we're getting the diagnosis and everything. And I had to step out and go let my cry out, and then I came back in. And she said, you good? I said, I'm good. So they admitted her. So she was in the hospital for 2 months. Now she's at a rehabilitation center because now she has to learn how to walk all over again. So I said to my daughter, I said, hey, let's go over there to Sherm, bring us something to eat because she can't stand the food over there. She said it has no taste. I said, look, doctors and nurses are the worst damn patients. Excuse me for cussing. I said, but y'all the worst damn patients. I said, you already know that the food ain't worth crap. So why are why are you whining? You know. So I called her, after the people finished with the windshield, and I said, hey, I said, they're done with the windshield. Shay and I get ready to come on over there and hang out with you. I said, it's hot as Methu's out here. I said, and then I got to get home and deep condition my hair. And I said, so what do you want to eat? So she told me, swung by, picked it up. I got us something to eat. And so we're just sitting there talking. And then after she finished eating, she says, I want to go home. Now I'm cleaning it up. I'm cleaning it up the way she said it. She said, I can't freaking take it no more. She said, I will crawl in my door. I said, well, let me explain something to you. Okay. I said, you have physical therapy 3 days a week. So on those other 4 days, instead of you sitting in this wheelchair barking orders, get your out that wheelchair and let's rock and roll. If you're ready to go home, this is what you got to do. So she said F me, I said F her. I put the lock on the wheelchair and I kicked the thing. You know how when you're sitting in the wheelchair, you have the little things to hold your feet. I kicked them right on up. I said, let's go. Let's go. I said, because you're sitting here whining and complaining, and that is not going to help the situation none. You got to start moving. Okay? So she was like, I said, let's start slow. We'll start from your wheelchair to the door, turn around, and go back. Sit down, get your bearings straight, and then we're going to do this 3-4 times. I said, and then the next trip, we're going to walk down this hallway. And she looked at me. I said, I don't want to hear you whining. Many years ago, I had walked outside, was getting ready to go to the grocery store, and it was snowing and everything. And I broke my ankle before I even hit the ground. It was broke. I threw that broken thing behind me and crawled back to my door. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. Okay. I was on a mission to get out this cold. Sat down on the little 2 steps, pushed myself up. I already had my keys, because they had fallen out of my hand. So I had to go to where the keys was to get them to put them back in my pocket. And then I got myself in the house and dialed 911. When these people got there, see, this is what I don't understand. Because I wasn't howling and screaming, giving them drama, the first thing came to their mind, I was on drugs. I looked at them, I said, drugs? I said, did it ever occur to you that I have tunnel vision? I said, because this ankle is killing me, especially now that it's defrosted. Okay. And that's how I was able to channel that pain. So when it got me up to the ambulance, because like I said, it was snowing really, really bad. My sister came and got my daughter, because she's the youngest one that's still at home. She came and got my daughter, and she said, look, once they get you situated, give us a call. We'll, as long as the weather's good, we'll come. And I said, don't worry about it. I'll holler. So when we got in the ambulance, they was trying to cut my I said, I know y'all not trying to cut these $170 boots off of me. I said, hold up. I leaned forward, zoom, unzipped them, boom, popped it right off my foot and leaned back. I said, because y'all replacing these boots? No, you're not. So we get to the hospital. They gave me something, knocked me right on out. I didn't even know that they had put my leg back together. I hadn't even been through surgery yet. But they did that. I had to go to radiologists so they could take pictures and everything. And I told them, look, don't touch me. Tell me how to move it, and I'll move it. So the radiologist says to me, he said, they think you on drugs. And I said, they can think whatever it is that they want, because I am not a drug addict. I said, every test they take will come back negative. So when I got back to my room, the guy says, yeah, all your test results came back negative. I said, I told you, I don't do drugs. I barely drink. Okay. So I had to explain. I said all that to say this. I had to say to my sister, if I was able to do that, come home, it's still ice, black ice, because they wouldn't let me go home during the day because I was hungry, and the medication that they was putting in my IV, because I wouldn't let them give it to me orally. So that's the only way that they can get medication in me. I don't believe in taking a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals. Let me say that first and foremost. Okay. When they brought breakfast that morning, I threw it all up. I said, ooh. I said, Lord, that felt good. And so the nurse is like, yeah, well, doctor saying that, you got to wait a couple more hours because you don't throw up. I said, well, you know why I threw up, because I told you don't put that stuff in my arm. Okay. So when they finally did release me, because I was like, look, y'all charging $150 every time you shoot this stuff through the IV. I can go home and take some, Advil, and it's going to give me the same result. I don't want no, what is it? Percocets. I don't want any of that. I said, because I'm at home. At the time, I had my youngest living with me, and I had my goddaughter living with me. I need to pay attention to what the heck is going on around me. Okay. So they gave them pills anyway, and my sister was like, you might as well go ahead and get them filled, whatever. I never took them. So a couple months went by. I was on light duty at work, and light duty is me sitting at my desk. Let's keep it above. And then when it was time for the cast to come off, the doctor says to me, I can tell you've been walking around on your toes. I said, look, the crutches, the walker, I had blisters all in between my fingers, all like right here. I was allergic to whatever that rubber was. I said, so I can't touch it. And yes, I was walking around on my toes. So when they took the cast off, I had healed 100%. He said I ain't never seen nothing like it. And he gave me a clean bill of health, told me to go home and live my life. And that's exactly what I did. So, with this happening with my sister, and I know before y'all say anything, I know people are different. I do. But you have to do what's best for you, and only you can get yourself out of a situation. And that's basically what I was saying to my sister. You know, you got to figure it out. So I'm gonna come back because this was supposed to be a perfume video, but I'm gonna come back and because I had to tell that story. It was on my heart. Maybe somebody else out here that needs to hear it. Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see each and every one of you in my next upload. Bye.